Call Halal Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shah, Bahashim Rakal Kadash. Double honors to the elders of GMS, including the elders that came before them that taught us His truth. Shalom and salutations to all the brothers out pushing the word of truth and sincerity. This is the brother Yahshua back with a short lesson and video. And probably be called the MO of the least of the flock. All right. So let's get that right away. This is Jeremiah 49 and 20. All right. Right here. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. All right? The least of the flock is talking about these Amalekites. Okay? All right? The synagogue of Satan. All right? So they're going to start this third woe. How are they going to do it? All right, well, let's watch a couple of videos. Let's see, what do we got? We'll start right here, okay, with this guy.
Brush your teeth in less than 10 seconds with...
Let's get this from the top.
Today on the newscast, a big story and a new front in the shadow war between Israel and Iran, as Israel reportedly strikes Iranian vessels at sea.
Okay, now, Israel targets Iranian ships funneling arms and oil to Syria. So if they're out there bombing ships, all right, these guys got a history of hitting ships and blaming other people for it. Okay? Now, right now, it's on par because it's coming out that they're the ones out there doing it. But all it takes, right? Who we got here? We got the Carmanians, all right? Or these Persians right here, okay? We got the Persians. It says targets what? Persian ships. Okay, who's this? That's the least of the flock. All right, so let's watch this a little bit.
What were these Iranian ships carrying, and why did Israel feel the need to act? Get all the breaking details coming up. Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. Once again, the behind-the-scenes covert war between Israel and Iran is coming out into the open. Last night, Thursday, March 11th, the Wall Street Journal published an explosive report detailing how Israel, over the past 2 years, has bombed at least 12 Iranian vessels at sea. Now, some background here. These Iranian vessels were bound for Syria, both Iran and Syria, obviously close allies and both mortal enemies of Israel. These ships were...
Says who? All right. Says who? The wicked that are born, are they coming forth from the womb speaking lies? Are we to believe this?
According to the Wall Street Journal, and according to U.S. and regional officials, that's who...
According to who? These guys are allies.
This information to the Journal. These ships were reportedly carrying oil in most cases, but also weapons shipments to the Assad regime and various Iranian-aligned terror factions inside Syria. Now, Israeli officials are not commenting on this Wall Street Journal report, and they will not comment on this report. But folks, it seems very, very likely that this did indeed go down. Israel used mines, apparently, to halt these ships as they were making their way to Syria in the Red Sea region and in...
He say, she say. Known in the scriptures as wars and rumors of war. All right? So, I mean, this is speculation at best. Did Israel come out and claim that it was them? All right. What's actually going on?
Areas in the region, these ships were targeted. Iranian vessels again, and at least 12 of them, according to this explosive, no pun intended, report in the Wall Street Journal yesterday.
Israel didn't say they did it. They didn't claim responsibility. It's the Wall Street Journal.
Using mines and stopping that flow of illegal oil coming from Iran to Syria, folks. Illegal in two ways. Number one, the Iranian regime is looking to skirt sanctions, U.S. sanctions that were enforced by the Trump administration that the Biden White House has yet to lift. They say they're not going to lift, but I fear that, yes, they will lift them. We're keeping a close eye on that. But so Iran has been trying to get around those U.S. sanctions, which have really crippled the Iranian economy. They're selling oil to various rogue regimes around the world. And
everybody's selling oil to everybody. Rogue regimes. It can be said that any country is a rogue regime. Okay.
One of their destinations has been their good buddies in Syria. That's number one. Number two, Syria is getting around international sanctions against their regime, so it's illegal on two levels.
Okay, so what about Russia? Russia is over there fighting on one in that proxy war too. So is Russia a rogue regime? Is Vladimir Putin running a rogue regime because he's fighting against Babylon the Great and the small hats in Syria? What is being said and what is not being said?
For Iran to be bringing this oil into Syria, that's number one. Number two, Israeli officials believe that this oil revenue can be used to fund terror organizations, Iran's proxies. Look, Hezbollah, obviously chief among them, various radical Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, of course, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. What about the Houthis in Yemen? The entire gamut.
Okay, so you get the idea, all right? So somebody's over there bombing ships, right? This is March 12th. Today is the 15th. So this is relatively new. All right? Israel targets.
It doesn't just get used as.
Israel targets Iranian ships funneling arms and oil to Syria. All right? Now let's watch this one. Okay? Let's go back and get some background. And MO, what does MO mean? It means modus operandi. It means how you get out, how you do things. This one is called The Day Israel Attacked America. Special series, all right, Al Jazeera. Okay, let's see. Let's check this out.
Yeah, on the anniversary.
Okay, so, and this is November 3rd, 2014, all right? But this is a little history on on how the least of the flock gets down. All right, let's watch this.
Early June 1967. The six-day war in the Middle East between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria is underway. A spy ship, very lightly armed, but bristling with antennae, steams into the Mediterranean to eavesdrop on the conflict. It is patrolling in international waters off the Egyptian coast. At 2 in the afternoon, on June the 8th, with the war reaching its climax, Israeli jets and motor torpedo boats launch an unprovoked attack on the ship. They drop napalm and strafe its decks with rockets, cannon fire, and armor-piercing rounds before trying to sink it with torpedoes.
We had no way to defend ourselves, and it was just, we're just slaughtered.
And they shot at the life rafts that were put into the water, and they shot the ones that were still on board the ship. Bullet holes, shell holes everywhere, blood. the forecastle, the front part of the ship, was just red with blood.
Throughout the attack, the ship flies the Stars and Stripes, the flag of Israel's closest ally, the United States of America. Its name, the USS Liberty, is freshly painted on its stern, and the bow carries the distinctive numbers of an American naval vessel.
Out of a crew of just under 300, there were 34 killed and 172 injured in varying degrees to life-threatening, life-debilitating injuries. So that was more than 2/3 of the crew.
This audio tape, which has never been broadcast before, was recorded in real time by the Israeli military during the assault. The woman's voice in the background is counting down the seconds. It proves that Israeli commanders knew all along that they were attacking an American ship. For the first time, this and other evidence allows us to reveal the true story of what happened that day and what came after. When a deadly assault by one ally on another was covered up, and an American president was manipulated by the secret agents of a foreign power.
Wait a minute. Why did they do that? Why did they do that?
Events that have shaped US-Israeli relations ever since.
This is
Slovakia. Little commercial there. What's going on here?
The United States Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C., June the 8th, 2014. Every year, on the anniversary of the attack on the USS Liberty, survivors, relatives, and supporters gather together.
it's a remembrance of those who were killed that day, the 34. I'm Dave Lucas. I was in charge of the deck force. I was 25. My first child was born when I was one day out on that cruise. So as long as they're survivors and maybe children of survivors, I think this will probably be an annual event.
And salute. Forward.
The names of the 34 killed are read out.
Oh. Yeah, ready.
Punctuated by the tolling of a Navy bell
David Marlborough.
and the playing of taps, the traditional military funeral lament.
It's important to not forget what happened and to continue to try to find out why it happened and
Why?
who made it happen.
Who made it?
In the summer of 1967, America was in turmoil. An incendiary mixture of racial discrimination and extreme poverty exploded into a summer of rioting in cities across the country. But one issue dominated.
Vietnam.
The Vietnam War. In all, 10,000 troops would die that year. The Americans were trapped. They couldn't leave, and they couldn't win. In the Middle East, too, war looked inevitable. There was growing tension between Israel and its Arab neighbors. Armies were mobilizing. Israel promised the White House they would not attack first, but on the 5th of June, they jammed radar sets at the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, so the Americans couldn't detect their jets taking off to launch a surprise assault on Egypt. Meanwhile, the USS Liberty was sailing across the Mediterranean into the war zone.
Liberty was a state-of-the-art intelligence gathering vessel of the time, and what we did is we were a listening ship. My name is Lloyd Painter. I was a research officer. We could receive any signal that was out there, low band, high band, anything, intercepting it, recording it. And we did have on board some translators who could have immediate translation of what was going on. We would actually bounce signals off the moon back to NSA.
We're spies. I'm Jim Kavanaugh. I was a communication technician aboard the USS Liberty, and I intercepted Morse code. We're spies. I mean, we're intercepting messages from embassies, military bases, police, anything and everything that we could get to ensure that the United States was comfortable with what was going on in the world and no one was conspiring against us. And basically, it was to protect our interests.
This was the Cold War. American President Lyndon Johnson knew that the Russians already had substantial military influence in Egypt. He needed to find out what they were going to do next, to make sure that a local conflict did not become a world war, with the USA backing Israel and Russia siding with the Arab cause.
I was assigned as a Russian linguist aboard the ship.
This is the same thing going on in Syria right now. Okay? And they're dancing around the whole situation. But why did Israel sink that ship or attack it? All right? Well, let's look down here in the comments. All right? Let's see. Let's look at this. I think they wanted to sink the U.S. ship and then blame it on Egypt to get the U.S. more involved. There it is. That's what they were doing. Pippi said, yes, I cannot see any other reason. But what was the U.S. ship doing there in the middle of a war? Right? Yes. Okay. Okay, so basically Israel wanted to blame the sinking or the attack on the ship on the Egyptians so that America could get into war. This is an old tactic. Gulf of Tonkin, same thing. All right. So what's going on over there? Who is Israel about to blame these attacks on? All right. All right, let's go back to this. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Draw who out? The forces, to draw them fighting forces, to draw out Babylon, to get them involved. Right? Let's get this. All right, so that's what I was getting at. All right, it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's get Revelation. Revelation 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All right, what's going on down there in Syria? What's going on down there in the Indian Sea with the oil tankers? What's going on over there in the Straits of Hormuz? Okay? The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All right? All right, we'll get this one. Go ahead and close. Isaiah. Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14:10. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become as weak as we? Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? That's what they're saying to Babylon the Great right now. All right. What is Iran over there doing? What is America doing, trying to get back into that nuclear arms treaty. They're trying to stop them from growing their nukes, right? Because everybody's got one now. Not one, several. All right? That's what's going on here. All right? So, I believe the point has been made. We can see the third woe coming quickly. All right? The least of the flock is over there doing what they do. All right? They're attacking ships. All right? And blaming it on people. All right? So we're at the end of this thing. All right? Stay on your watch, all right? So with that, we're going to say shalom.